Hi guys, this is the Blitzburgh Show, episode 2. In today's episode, we're going to go over the hot topics of this week surrounding the Steelers football and Steelers news. And then towards the tail end of the episode, we're going to go ahead and review the Steelers preseason week 1 game versus the Giants and some highlights and lowlights from that particular game. So we're going to start off today by going over the first hot headline that's come by the Steelers this week, which is going to be the Martavis Bryant news that Martavis Bryant has been granted from the NFL to go ahead and start practicing with his team and play in preseason games. If you ask me, it's a little bit late on this whole situation of allowing Martavis Bryant to go ahead and practice with the team and participate in the preseason games. I think the NFL's really dragged their feet on this situation. I know some of the news that's coming out is that they are waiting on documents from Martavis Bryant's counselors, his rehab counselors, therapies, whatever counselors he has that were required from the NFL. I guess apparently they had to go ahead and submit some documents to clear him to be ready to go for the clearance to practice and participate in preseason games. Honestly, to play devil's advocate here, the NFL's never had a player be suspended for an entire season and come back and be fully reinstated. So this is all new territory, not only for Martavis Bryant and the Steelers, but also for the NFL. So I think maybe they're kind of fumbling on their process and everything and how they want to handle this and how they should go about it to make this speedy and efficient for both the organization, Martavis Bryant, and for the NFL. So I think this is going to be a learning experience for the NFL as to how they should go about this whole situation and how they should prove upon the process, so that way it's not as a elongated gap in between being, partially reinstated to allowing to participate with the team during training camp and actually being able to play in preseason games. Now, just to make things abundantly clear, this does not make Martavis Bryant fully reinstated yet. So he's still not even cleared to play week 1 against the Browns in September for the season opener. So we still have another loop that we have to get through for Martavis Bryant to be guaranteed on the active roster here in the season opener against the Browns. So, we still have a ways to go as to getting out of the woods with Martavis Bryant in this whole situation. And if you ask for my honest opinion on this situation, it's been drawn out way too long. Martavis Bryant's suspension was for the 2016 season. He served that suspension. They didn't get in trouble while he was suspended. Stayed away from the team, which I don't agree with. I think you shouldn't take a guy that's troubled in that kind of situation away from the team. Obviously away from the game, but not from his teammates who are guys that are encouraging him and trying to give him the right direction to get his life back on track. But luckily for Martavis Bryant, seems like he put the right people around him. Seems like he's made some good life changes to make his life accommodate football and be able to actually live his life in a manner that's healthy and sustainable for his foreseeable future as a NFL player. But like I said, the suspension was for the 2016 season. We're in the 2017 season now, and we're still having problems with him getting activated from being on the suspended list and actually being fully reinstated. So this whole situation should be a good learning tool for the NFL to go ahead and find ways to make this process smoother for the players and for the organizations and for the NFL in itself, because this has been just one big old headache, to be honest with you. We need Martavis Bryant out there practicing, getting his time back with Ben Roethlisberger. Yeah, you could say they could, go out to the side of the field and throw the football and run some patterns that way, but unfortunately, just doing that's not enough to get that game time feel and get your rhythm back. And, he hasn't played in a football game for over a year now, so getting him out there sooner rather than later is obviously going to be beneficial, one, to Martavis Bryant, and two, to the Pittsburgh Steelers and them getting to where they want to be, which is getting that 7th Super Bowl. So Martavis Bryant, good news that he can go ahead and practice now and play in this preseason games. Just unfortunately, we're not out of the woods with Martavis Bryant's situation. My fear is that we could go into the last week of preseason and he still hasn't been given the all clear to go ahead and start in the season opener. And hopefully that's not the case, but the way the NFL dragged their feet on this particular portion of the 2017 year, doesn't make me think otherwise that it may not be the situation here come week 4 of the preseason, waiting on week 1 of the regular season, the season opener against the Cleveland Browns, and we may be without Martavis Bryant. Not to say that we can't go in there and still win our season opener against the Browns, which we should, without Martavis Bryant. But obviously, we want Martavis Bryant out there. Any game you have Martavis Bryant playing makes your team better. So obviously, getting Bryant fully reinstated and back on the active roster for the Week 1 opener against Browns is the main goal, and we still haven't obtained that just because he's only been partially reinstated by the NFL to go ahead and practice and play in preseason games at this point. So, I mean, we'll take it, but unfortunately, if you ask me and you ask a lot of fans, this should have been done a long time ago. It should have been done a few weeks back when training camp first started, but unfortunately, that's not the case. And obviously, it's been frustrating for us as fans, frustrating for the organization as we've seen through the media, frustrating for Martavis Bryant as the player. The only person that's not really frustrated in this situation would seem to be the league. So hopefully they take this as a learning experience and they actually go ahead and knot it up. They fix this situation and how players coming back from being suspended for a year long get reinstated, because this has just been a roller coaster of a ride trying to get Martavis Bryant in the clear, and seems like he's doing everything that he needs to be doing. He's done everything that the NFL has asked of him, according to himself and to Kevin Colbert, and pretty much the entire Steelers staff have come out and said Martavis Bryant's done everything he's needed to do according to what the NFL has required of him. So at this point, hopefully, fingers crossed that we don't have this situation happening again in Week 4 of the preseason going into the season opener, where we still don't have an answer as far as whether or not Martavis Bryant's going to be getting a jersey on the season opening game against the Browns. So happy for Martavis Bryant, happy for our Steelers to get Martavis Bryant for at least the preseason, get him into practice, start getting him some reps with the team and team drills, and getting him back into the mold of playing football and getting his feel back and getting that rust off as quickly as possible. But we're not out of the woods, like I've said before, with this whole situation. It's just been put on pause for now, and we've been allowed to kind of fast forward to the next chapter, which is allowing him to practice and play in preseason games. So hopefully, like I said before, this isn't the same situation we have to deal with going into the regular season, but I'm not going to hold my breath on it. All right, guys, we're going to move on to the next topic. Next topic is going to be on the new Devonta Freeman contract extension that just got done this past week. Devonta Freeman with the Atlanta Falcons got his contract for $41.25 million for 5 more years to play with the Falcons. The reason why this is a topic for the Steelers and is obviously because Le'Veon Bell's playing on the franchise tag, and any new contract extensions that get done or new contracts that get put in place for any top-tier running back in the league is going to affect negotiations with Le'Veon Bell and the Pittsburgh Steelers, which in all means right now it seems like that's still the case, that the Steelers will still go ahead and negotiate with Le'Veon Bell after the 2017 season concludes. And in this situation, Devonta Freeman now becomes the highest paid running back. His average yearly salary is probably going to be around $8.5 million per year if you were to break it up evenly, but I'm sure it fluctuates. But we'll, for all intensive purposes, assume that it's 8.5. He's around the same ballpark as LaShawn McCoy. I think he got a slightly higher contract than LaShawn McCoy, not by much. And LaShawn McCoy and Devonta Freeman are both top-tier running backs in this league. I would say both are easily top 10. LaShawn McCoy, you could definitely make argument for top 5. Devonta Freeman, he's probably right on the brink of top 5, to be honest with you. Now, as far as in regards to Le'Veon Bell, this contract probably doesn't bode well for him. One, because it's nowhere near the number that he's looking for, which is, for our purposes, we'll say is $15 million, which I think it's higher than that, but that's the only really number we've gotten so far from his song that he went ahead and made, that he says he wanted $15 million a year. Given that Devonta Freeman's one of the top tier backs and he's the latest running back to get a new contract of that caliber, him only getting $8 million and agreeing on $8 million per year is nowhere near that $15 million a year number. So obviously that affects Le'Veon Bell and his agent's ability to use that as ammunition in negotiations. Now, Is it a good thing for the Steelers and for us as fans? Not really either, just because the fact of the matter is the Steelers can definitely use that as ammunition whenever they go to negotiate with Le'Veon Bell, which is not something that really I see as a good tool for the Steelers, just because it could anger Le'Veon Bell or it could push him to pursue other teams via unrestricted free agency or as an unrestricted free agent and see if he really can get that number, which honestly, if it's $15 million, I think that number is obtainable. It's not going to be from a competitive team, honestly, just because I don't think there's any team that's going to be willing or able to take on a $15 million salary cap hit per season for a running back. So it'll be on a lesser team as far as quality. But there will be teams out there that are going to be willing to offer him $15 million a year to go play running back for him. So in my opinion, I think that could be the case if the Steelers try to use the Devonta Freeman contract as a part of their ammunition during negotiations as to why they shouldn't pay Le'Veon Bell $15 million. And then from my perspective, honestly, I think, sitting in Le'Veon Bell's shoes with his agent, the Steelers try to go ahead and present Devonta Freeman's latest contract extension. It'll probably just result in Le'Veon Bell and his agent wanting to go ahead and either close out negotiations and look towards the free agency, or maybe they'll take it in stride and come down on their asking price for Le'Veon Bell's contract extension. Who knows? I mean, at the end of the day, this is a business, and I gotta assume that the fact that Le'Veon Bell is asking as much as he wants, he's gonna pursue that to all possible directions that he can, and one of those directions is gonna be free agency. So I don't think this new contract extension by Devonta Freeman really helps the cause at all. I think it probably just hurts both sides, the Steelers and Le'Veon Bell in this situation, so we'll just see how it plays out. But I thought I'd just go ahead and bring up that situation just because it is interesting and it does correlate to the whole Le'Veon Bell Steelers situation. So that's that for that topic. Alright, the next topic's a little bit of an interesting one. I don't know how many of you have heard this, but it just came out here on Friday that apparently the Steelers are showing interest in trading for Rams cornerback Trumaine Johnson. This came out on CBS, I believe, from Jason LaCanfora. Honestly, I'm not going to go too far into it because I really, in my honest opinion, I think this is just a situation where they're just blowing it up as far as what the actuality of the interest is from the Steelers. I think probably what ended up happening was the Steelers just called in just because the Rams probably went ahead and sent out a league-wide notice that that there's players on the trading block, and Trumaine Johnson would just happen to be one of those players on that trading block that they presented, and the Steelers just called in just to see what's going on there. I don't think it was any legitimate interest or legitimate talks of possibly trading for Trumaine Johnson. Reason being is he's playing on his second franchise tag, which means he's making $17 million. And that means the Steelers would have to be able to swallow that $17 million. And unfortunately, with the Steelers' plans right now, trying to get Stephon Tuitt's contract done, and then looking towards the future with Ryan Shazier and possibly Le'Veon Bell as well, there's not really a way that I could see them being able to take on Trumaine Johnson's franchise tag and being able to absorb that this year and be able to go ahead and get some other guys that they need to get locked up long-term done. So I don't really think it is as big as maybe some people are blowing it up to be. I think it was just one of those situations where the Steelers called in just to see what the situation was with Trumaine Johnson. And on top of that, I have to look into it deeper, but I'm pretty sure you can't have two franchise-tagged players on your roster as an individual team, even if you trade for one. So I don't even think it's plausible for the trade to even happen, just because Steelers in that situation, I would believe, would have to trade Le'Veon Bell for Trumaine Johnson, in which case that makes not really any sense because the Rams have Todd Gurley there, who's pretty much cemented as their starter, unless somehow we did some kind of crazy package where we sent Le'Veon Bell there, they send us Trumaine Johnson and Todd Gurley, and that would result in us having to send either a package of players or picks, and the Steelers just don't do that kind of blockbuster trade. So I just thought it was interesting that it came across the headlines and thought I'd just give my tidbit on it. Alright, so now we're going to go into the last portion where I'm going to talk about the preseason opening game against the Giants that just happened here on Friday night. Steelers came out as the winners, beating the Giants 20-12 in MetLife Stadium. We're going to go over a few players that I thought won the game, and a few players that may have just hurt themselves through the first game of preseason. First and foremost, I'm going to start with Mike Hilton, who, I think a lot of people going into this game, a lot of optimism for Mike Hilton, and rightfully so. I mean, he had a phenomenal game coming in as a slot corner reserve unit. He had a phenomenal sack on Geno Smith where he blitzed off the corner, very much so reminiscent of William Gay in his earlier years, blitzing off that slot corner spot. And he got Geno Smith down pretty convincingly and pretty fast, so that was kind of a nice play to see. And then on top of that, he did recover a fumble from hustling on a punt return, so that's always great to be able to see those kind of reserve guys be able to contribute on special teams, so kudos to him for being able to do that and show that ability. And then one other play that he had that I don't know if too many people noticed, but I'm sure you guys did, but he had a fourth down stop on a run play up the middle where he shot in and wrapped up the back's legs and got him down before he could get to the marker to get the first down. And that's one of those heads-up plays that you love to see from these guys coming in off the street, fighting for a job. You want to see them be scrappy, run and get the guys down and play with their hair on fire. And Mike Hilton did just that, and he did, I believe, have fared well in pass coverage. Didn't do anything spectacular, but definitely wasn't a glaring issue in pass coverage. But the plays he did make were substantial, and they did get noticed. I believe Mike Tomlin went ahead and made a comment in the lines of, the moment wasn't too big for him, and it definitely wasn't. If he continues to string along the rest of this preseason with performances like that, he's going to make himself tough to cut. And honestly, if he continues the route he's going right now and continues to perform in these games, I'm going to be pushing hard to have Mike Hilton on the roster, just because he's showing definitely some flashes that he has the ability to play in this league and could be a valuable asset down the road. Not saying he's going to be a starter anytime soon for the Steelers defense, but I'm not saying that he can't contribute at some particular means, is, even if it is just special teams, he could come in on a pinch and, spot start, for William Gay in the slot to give him a breather. But in last night's game, he definitely showed that he has that ability and he can play in this league. So that was very encouraging to see that from him. And I'm sure his hype will just get enlarged more and more going from preseason to preseason game if he keeps performing this way. So I was very encouraged by the way he played, and he's very much so as advertised from training camp, with all the positive comments and feedback that he was getting throughout training camp practices. My next guy is TJ Watt, big winner. A lot of people are kind of frowning upon his stat line, considering that he had 2 sacks that a lot of people are saying were gimme sacks or circumstantial sacks. To be quite honest with you, sacks are sacks. They don't read any differently on the stat sheet, so I'm not going to take it away from TJ Watt. I thought it was phenomenal that he got 2 sacks in the first half. That first sack, a lot of people will say, well, Josh Johnson just ran into him. No, I disagree. I think, he did exactly what you want to do. He was pushing that left tackle into the pocket. I mean, he wasn't moving him too much, but he was pushing him inside the pocket, and he held the edge. And when Josh Johnson tried to go ahead and break the pocket and scramble through the lane there between the left tackle and left guard, TJ Watt had the awareness and the ability to go ahead and shed that tackle and be able to wrap him up before he could get to the line of scrimmage for a sack. So that was a heads-up sack there for the first sack. And the second sack, a lot of people don't see his football IQ there and his awareness on that second sack. I believe it was a RPO play where it was a repass option, and the running back and the quarterback were back in shotgun. Quarterback goes ahead and fakes it like he's going to hand it off to the running back on that RPO. He could have handed it to the running back, but obviously he saw something on the right where he believed that it was better to go ahead and pull it back in and go for the pass option. And when he does that, a lot of guys will actually bite on the running back, thinking it's a it's a handoff to the running back, in which case that's why that RPO works so efficiently, is that you get guys that bite on that and gives a quarterback the ability to scramble out to the left or the right, whichever direction it's opposite of, and either get a throw completed out to the receiver or actually even scramble for yardage in that situation too. So TJ Watt showed his football IQ and his awareness by not biting down on that running back there whenever he went to fake it, and actually shifted towards the quarterback, which allowed him to get the sack there. So that was a good, smart play there by TJ Watt. A lot of people see that as a gimme sack just because TJ Watt wasn't blocked, but blocked or not, he went ahead and made the right read there, not biting on the running back and getting the quarterback. So you got to give him credit there for his awareness and his football IQ to be able to see that play pan out in real time and have the quickness to make the right decision and wrap up the quarterback for the sack. And then on top of that, he did have a pass defense where he tipped the ball, had 3 quarterback hits, 5 total tackles. So by no means is that a bad night. He had a very good night. It's encouraging to see what he was able to bring, and he had a lot of hustle to him. Almost every time he was, going in after the pass rusher, he was either getting close to the ball or close enough to get pressure to the quarterback and make the quarterback feel it. So those were a lot of heads-up moments for TJ Watt, and very encouraged by his performance in the first preseason game as to what he could bring this season possibly. But obviously we got 3 more games left, so we need to see him do it for a consistency and see if he can get them done here for the next 3 games. And honestly, like I said in the last video last week, I do think that TJ Watt will start the season opener as the starting right outside linebacker. So and he's definitely making the strides right now, given that first preseason game, to do that. So very encouraging night from TJ Watt, and happy to see him perform the way he did. The next winner is going to be Kobe Hamilton. The funny thing about Kobe Hamilton is all I've read and seen this training camp is that he's pretty much been a no-show on the field. He's not really performed well in training camp and in practices. He's kind of been a guy that pretty much everybody had him written off already, not making this roster. Even though he is practice squad eligible still, everything that was being shown in training camp, according to his performance, was showing that he probably wasn't going to get the chance to get back on the practice squad with the Steelers. Good thing for him, though, is that I think we found out that Kobe Hamilton is a game day player. Maybe his thing is he just does not perform well in practice and he shows up in games, which isn't the first time we've seen players have that happen or have that MO, is that they're game time players, and they just perform better in the bigger stage. And it seems like Kobe Hamilton might be just one of those guys. I mean, last year we all know he was pretty clutch on the third down catches during the season, and I believe he had maybe 1 or 2 during the playoffs as well. Just a sure possession receiver. And he did the same thing here in the first preseason game against the Giants with Joshua Dobbs throwing him a couple passes, one down the middle for 44 yards. That was a pretty nice throw and catch there. Beat the receiver, beat the cornerback, who was actually former Steeler Antoine Blake, which a lot of us are probably have already forgotten him, and rightfully so. Pretty terrible in coverage. And then the safety up top just pretty much lost track of him, and Kobe Hamilton was pretty open for that pass, and it was a nice high throw for a guy with some size there from Joshua Dobbs, and Kobe Hamilton came down with it. And then he had his touchdown pass on the right side of the field there from Joshua Dobbs, beat the corner, got about a step or 2 on him, and pretty easy catch and touchdown there for him. But the same thing still resides for Kobe Hamilton. I don't want to take anything away from his performance, but his ability to get separation is definitely troublesome and has always been a problem for him. It seems to still be a problem, but nonetheless, he had a good night, and he's a winner in this particular game here in the first preseason game. The next winner is I will go ahead and give it to Arthur Moats. Had a pretty good game, given the talent level he was playing against. Even Mike Tomlin came out and said about Moats was that he was an 11th grader playing against playing in a JV game, so that should tell you how Tomlin looks at most performance, and I look at it the same way. He's kind of playing against lesser talent. He should be able to dominate. He should have a good game, and that's exactly what he did with 3 sacks and an interception and 6 total tackles. So kind of expected out of Arthur Moats, but nonetheless, good performance from him. So I'll go ahead and give it to him and name him a winner this week for the first preseason game. Another guy that I'm not really a bona fide winner, but he needs to be given some credit because he did a lot of good things. Last night was Javon Hargraves, the nose tackle, was definitely swallowing up some blockers. Had a couple plays where he was just quicker than the offensive lineman, was able to get in the backfield and disrupt things. It's definitely encouraging seeing him do that. Can't wait to see him during the season because I think he's going to be a really big piece for us, and he's really going to take a big step from his rookie season into his sophomore season. So good game from him, and he's definitely a winner in this game. And I can't wait to see him out there in the field when the season starts because he's going to be a force to reckon with, and can't wait to see it. Now for my losers in the game, I'm going to go ahead and give this one to Gerald Hawkins first and foremost, just because I watched him specifically on offensive line just because I wanted to see what he would do, given that we didn't really get to see much of him last year because he had the injury and was placed on IR. Gerald Hawkins looked really slow coming out of his stance and during plays, recognizing the rushers coming off the edge, and it was not a good night for him. So he's definitely getting put in the loser column this week for his performance, and hopefully it's just the rust coming off from not playing for a whole year and being injured, and next week we'll see a little bit of better performance from him because everything we've been hearing every time he's suited up from last year's training camp to this year's training camp is that he looks good and he's in shape and he's a better blocker than a lot of people think of him. So hopefully later on in this preseason we see that and we get some justification to the reports that we get from training camp on his performance. But right now he's definitely getting the L for his weak performance in last night's game against the Giants. My next loser is going to be Juju Smith-Schuster. Don't get me wrong, I like the little that we saw from Juju Smith-Schuster. Definitely a gritty player, physical, and definitely looks like he knows what he's doing out there from the, I think, 3 plays we got to see him perform out there. But nonetheless, he gets put on the loser column just because he did get knocked out of the game with that concussion on that interception where he kind of unnecessarily put himself in harm's way by trying to go down there, and I don't know what he was doing, trying to tag the guy or, jump the ball, whatever he was trying to do, but he didn't accomplish anything good, and he actually ended up knocking himself out, so we didn't get to really see him much. Don't get me wrong, he's only in this column just because he got knocked out from his concussion on a play that really shouldn't have happened. But next week I expect him to bounce back, and hopefully he passes the protocol this week, and we get to see him play against the Falcons in the Week 2 preseason game. And that's all I really got for losers this week. Only other thing I'll comment on from the game is I know a lot of people were up and down on Josh Dobbs' performance. Mind you, this was his first preseason game. I'm not one of the many that think that Joshua Dobbs could eventually take the reins from Ben Roethlisberger. I've always thought since we drafted him that his best potential was going to be a long-term backup, kind of like, Charlie Batch was for us or Landry Jones is now for us. The thing is he had a lot of ups and downs in this game. I think towards the second quarter, he performed a lot better from there on out. That first quarter was really bad for him. Those 2 picks he threw were interceptions that definitely should have been prevented. They were just throws that he had no business making. The first interception, I believe, somebody went out and said that maybe the receiver had ran the wrong route and it was a miscommunication. Either of which, when he makes that throw, he's got to put more air under it and try to kind of hit his receiver in stride as he sees his receiver rather than relying on the route to be ran the way he thinks the communication dictates it. And then that second interception where the Giants brought that middle blitz in the the edge rusher on the right dropped back into the middle of coverage. He's got to be able to see that edge rusher peel back, even though it's a hard read to make, especially asking from a rookie in his first game ever as an NFL player. But he's definitely got to learn to be able to recognize that and make that read and not throw that ball in the middle there where that defensive end is kicking back into the zone during that blitz there. So definitely some things that he can work on, definitely some things that he can look back on and see as positives, that he did do some things right, and definitely were encouraging to see him be able to bounce back after those 2 interceptions and score that touchdown to Kobe Hamilton and drive down the field there. So he definitely had some spots where he's going to have to work on, but he's a rookie. He's a 4th-round pick. This was something that shouldn't have surprised anybody from his performance in the first game. I think a lot of people were hoping he came out and just lit it up and threw 200 yards and a couple touchdowns and everything and no interceptions, but this is more of a realistic outcome of what was probably going to happen, and it happened just the way that you would expect it from a 4th-round rookie quarterback. So he's got a lot of areas where he can improve on, some things that he did well, a lot of things that he's definitely going to have to work on throughout the year and moving forward in his career. But as of right now, he still looks like a career backup to me, and it looks like going in the future, looking for Ben's replacement, it'll be in the draft here next year or the year after, or whenever the Steelers decide to go ahead and pull a trigger on a high-round quarterback. And don't get me wrong, it's coming. I personally think that it could be this next year that you see the Steelers pull the trigger on a quarterback anywhere from the 1st to 3rd round. I know the 3rd round would be kind of, same thing we did this year, even though Josh Dobbs was a 4th-round pick, but it just kind of gives you that sense of urgency that the front office sees that, Ben Roethlisberger's door is closing and, his career is coming to an end here sooner rather than later. Whether it's next year or the year after, the Steelers have to get a guy on the roster that can take the reins and, be able to lead the team to some wins. So that guy's, I believe, still not on the roster, but I do like Josh Dobbs and hope that he grows and progresses further into becoming more of a well-rounded NFL quarterback and is able to learn from his experiences from this first preseason game. And excited to see him and see how he does in this next game against the Falcons next weekend, and see how he progresses and see how he performs going from the first week being pretty shaky to next week of preseason here against the Falcons. All right, guys, that's going to be it for the second episode of the Blitzburgh Show. I'll be going ahead and posting another episode following week after the Steelers' second preseason game against the Falcons next weekend, and probably look for that video getting posted somewhere around midweek following the preseason game, just because I'll be out of town. Won't be able to actually get to it till I get back and get all the video edited and everything. So once I get that done, I'll go ahead and get it posted, and it'll be kind of the same of what this week was, going ahead and going over a few little topics of some hot news from the Steelers camp and everything, and what's going on with the Steelers and everything related to the Steelers, and then just a recap of some winners and losers from the week 2 preseason game against the Falcons. Thank you for listening. You guys have a good one. Go Steelers.